Why are Cleveland Browns veterans suddenly speaking up for Shedeur Sanders, and why now? While league insiders whisper about other quarterbacks, voices inside the locker room are sending a completely different message. Is this genuine belief or the beginning of a power shift nobody saw coming? It didn't start with a press conference. It didn't start with the front office. It started with a veteran. When Shelby Harris sat down on that podcast, most fans probably expected the usual off-season talk, generic praise, safe answers, nothing headline-worthy. Instead, what he said immediately caught attention across Cleveland. "I was highly impressed with the kid." That alone wouldn't have gone viral, but it was what came next that shifted the tone. Harris said Shedeur Sanders got the short end of the stick. He pushed back on the noise. He addressed the elephant in the room, the fact that Shedeur is the son of Deion Sanders, and made it clear that narrative fatigue inside the building isn't matching what the public keeps repeating. That matters. Because Shelby Harris isn't a rookie trying to score political points. He's a veteran defensive lineman, a locker room presence, a player who's seen multiple quarterback rooms, multiple coaching staffs, and multiple media cycles. When someone like that goes out of his way to defend a young quarterback publicly, it raises eyebrows. Especially in March. The offseason is when speculation runs wild. Anonymous scouts, draft rumors, combine whispers. It's easy for narratives to spiral, but Harris didn't hedge, he didn't soften it. He said Shedeur works, shows up early, builds relationships, puts in the time. That directly challenges one of the loudest criticisms floating around, that Shedeur's spotlight comes from his last name. Harris essentially reframed the conversation. He compared it to Peyton and Eli, to players who didn't choose their football lineage. He made the argument simple: you can't control who your father is, but you can control how you show up every day. And according to him, Shedeur shows up. What makes this moment more significant is the timing. The Browns are heading into a season filled with quarterback uncertainty. Rumors are circulating, money is tied up elsewhere, analysts are debating draft strategy, and in the middle of all that, a respected veteran is saying publicly, "This kid deserves real consideration." That's not accidental. Veterans don't usually stick their necks out unless they believe something strongly. There's risk in backing the wrong guy. Locker rooms remember that. So when Shelby Harris goes viral defending Shedeur Sanders, it's more than just a soundbite. It's a signal. And once one veteran speaks up, others start getting asked the same question. That's when things start to shift. Then came the voice that really carries weight. When Myles Garrett speaks, the entire building listens, not just because he's the franchise pass rusher, not just because he's one of the best defensive players in football, but because he's the tone setter in that locker room. So when he was asked directly, "Is Shedeur the guy?" everyone leaned in. Garrett didn't explode with hype, he didn't crown him the future, he didn't overcommit. Instead, he chose his words carefully. "We're going to give him a shot to prove that he's the guy." That line might sound neutral on the surface, but in the NFL, wording is everything. He didn't say it's a competition. He didn't say we'll see what happens. He didn't redirect the question. He emphasized opportunity, and he emphasized that Shedeur was the last guy on the field, showing flashes. That's subtle endorsement. And subtle can be louder than bold declarations. When a veteran superstar publicly positions a young quarterback as first in line to prove himself, it shifts perception. It tells the locker room that leadership isn't resisting the idea. It tells the fan base that belief exists internally. And it quietly sends a message to the front office: the players are watching. But Garrett also stopped short of handing out the title. "We're not going to give anyone that title until they earn it." That's important. Because this wasn't blind loyalty, it wasn't emotional backing, it was controlled support. The kind that keeps pressure on the quarterback while still validating him. And then came the real tension point. When asked about the $40 million quarterback on the roster, would he get a shot too? Garrett didn't hesitate. Everyone on the roster is going to get a shot. That's leadership language, fair, balanced, non-divisive. But notice what came first. Shedeur was described as the guy getting first opportunity, the one already showing flashes, the one earning first servings. That order matters. Garrett didn't create controversy, he didn't attack anyone. He simply acknowledged reality as he sees it inside the building. And in a season filled with outside noise, draft rumors, trade speculation, anonymous scout opinions, that kind of internal clarity stands out. Because when your best defensive player speaks carefully but clearly about a quarterback's potential, that's not random. That's calculated belief. And when belief starts forming at the top of the locker room hierarchy, the entire conversation begins to change. Now we get to the part nobody can ignore. Because no matter how much veterans praise Shedeur Sanders, there's still a massive reality sitting in the quarterback room, and it comes with a $40+ million price tag. Deshaun Watson. Fully guaranteed contract, franchise-level investment, organizational commitment that reshaped the cap sheet the moment it was signed. And that changes everything. In the NFL, money talks, it dictates opportunity, it influences patience, it shapes how long a leash really is. When a quarterback carries that kind of financial weight, the assumption is simple: he's the guy until proven otherwise. So when veterans publicly push momentum toward Shedeur, it naturally raises questions. Is this a true open competition? Or is the contract still the deciding factor? To be clear, there's no confirmed internal conflict. In fact, according to Shelby Harris, Watson was supportive. He reportedly traveled to one of Shedeur's early starts despite not traveling earlier in the season. He answered questions, helped the younger quarterbacks, stayed engaged. That detail matters, because it pushes back against any easy narrative of friction. But here, where things get complicated. Even if Watson is supportive behind the scenes, the business side doesn't disappear. A $40+ million quarterback sitting behind a younger player becomes a national storyline instantly. Media scrutiny spikes, ownership gets questioned, every incomplete pass turns into debate content. Some fans believe the Browns are financially stuck. Others argue that if Shedeur truly wins the job, the organization has to follow performance over contract. That tension is real, and it creates a unique dynamic inside the building. If Shedeur takes control in camp, does the front office lean into that momentum, or does the weight of the contract slow that shift? If Watson looks sharp again, does experience override youth hype? There's no easy answer. What makes this situation fascinating is that it's not just talent versus talent. It's momentum versus money. Locker room energy versus financial investment. And those two forces don't always move in the same direction. Right now, veterans are signaling belief in Shedeur's work ethic and growth. But contracts don't disappear because of praise. The Browns have to balance performance, perception, and business reality, all at the most important position in sports. And if this becomes a true competition, the spotlight won't just be on the quarterbacks. It'll be on the organization's willingness to make the hard call. While veterans inside the building were publicly backing Shedeur Sanders, a completely different narrative was forming hundreds of miles away at the NFL Combine. And that's where things got noisy. Every year, the Combine becomes a breeding ground for speculation. No games, no real action. Just interviews, measurements, whispers, and anonymous quotes floating through media circles. It's the perfect environment for narratives to shift without anyone having to fully own them. Suddenly, reports started surfacing. Some insiders suggested the Cleveland Browns could explore other quarterback options. Names like Anthony Richardson were casually mentioned in league chatter. Others floated the idea of competition from players like Malik Willis. None of it confirmed, none of it official, but enough to spark debate. Then came the anonymous scout quotes. Not sure he's a first-round talent. Some teams aren't fully sold. There are concerns. No names attached, no direct accountability, just league-wide murmurs that subtly undercut the growing locker room momentum behind Shedeur. And this is where the divide became obvious. Inside the Browns facility, veterans like Shelby Harris and Myles Garrett were talking about work ethic, leadership, and flashes on the field. Outside the building, anonymous voices were questioning long-term upside and draft positioning. That contrast matters, because anonymous opinions carry weight in media cycles even when they lack context. One unnamed executive can fuel a week's worth of headlines, A single combine rumor can shape fan perception before training camp even begins. G. Bush addressed this directly. He made it clear he values in-house voices over outside speculation. His stance was simple. He cares about what players and decision-makers inside Cleveland believe, not what random league executives might say off the record in Indianapolis hallways. And that perspective highlights something important. The Combine isn't just about evaluating players, it's about leverage. Teams float ideas, agents test narratives, media members amplify speculation. Sometimes it's strategic, sometimes it's just off-season boredom. But it creates smoke. And where there's smoke, fans assume fire. Now, to be fair, exploring quarterback options would be normal. Every franchise evaluates depth. Every front office keeps contingency plans. That doesn't automatically mean distrust in Shedeur. Still, the timing felt intentional to some observers. Right as veterans publicly endorsed him, outside noise intensified. Coincidence? Possibly. Or just the reality of an offseason where quarterback conversations dominate every microphone in sight. Either way, the Browns now find themselves in an interesting position, internal belief growing louder, external skepticism growing sharper. And when those two forces collide, the pressure doesn't stay quiet for long. Here, where this situation becomes more than just a quarterback competition. In the NFL, hierarchy matters. Veterans hold weight, rookies earn stripes, and when a rookie quarterback walks into a locker room, especially one with an established, high-paid veteran already there, the balance can get delicate fast. That's why what's happening in Cleveland feels different. Normally, veterans stay neutral in March. They avoid publicly backing one quarterback over another. They lean into competition language. They keep things diplomatic, because choosing sides too early can fracture a room before training camp even begins. But with Shedeur Sanders, multiple respected voices have stepped forward. That's not typical. It suggests something is happening behind closed doors that fans don't see on highlight reels. Shelby Harris didn't just compliment talent, he emphasized work ethic, early arrivals, time spent building relationships, hanging out with teammates. That last detail might sound small, but in an NFL locker room, it's everything. Quarterbacks don't lead only through playbooks. They lead through presence. When teammates see a young quarterback putting in extra hours, asking questions, staying late, and connecting beyond football, it builds quiet credibility. Not hype, not headlines, just trust. And trust is the currency that decides who players rally around when things get difficult in October. There's also the larger shadow that follows Shedeur, the legacy factor. Being the son of Deion Sanders means attention was always going to be amplified. Some fans assume entitlement, some analysts assume shortcuts. But inside the building, veterans are describing the opposite. They're describing grind. That contrast matters. Because if the locker room felt he was coasting off his name, you wouldn't hear public endorsements. You'd hear silence, neutrality, safe cliches. Instead, you're hearing defense. Now, this doesn't automatically mean he's the starter. Effort alone doesn't secure QB1, performance does, command does, decision-making under pressure does. But early locker room momentum can influence competition in subtle ways. When receivers believe in a quarterback, they run routes harder. When linemen respect him, they protect with extra edge. When defenders endorse him publicly, it signals unity across position groups. That's powerful. At the same time, rookie hype can backfire if it outpaces results. If expectations balloon too quickly, every mistake feels magnified, every interception turns into debate fuel. That's the risk Cleveland would have to manage. So this isn't just rookie versus veteran. It's credibility versus contract. Organic support versus established authority. And the fascinating part, the veterans aren't dismissing the older presence. They're simply highlighting what they're seeing from the younger one. That's a subtle but important distinction. Because when veteran authority begins leaning toward rookie potential, it doesn't happen randomly. It happens when work meets opportunity. And if that momentum keeps building through OTAs and camp, the power dynamic in that quarterback room could quietly shift long before a depth chart ever becomes official. Now we get to the layer that quietly shapes everything. Because no quarterback conversation in Cleveland exists without circling back to Kevin Stefanski. At one point, there were whispers of a disconnect, not loud accusations, not confirmed reports, but subtle questions from media members suggesting the public chemistry between Stefanski and Shedeur Sanders didn't always look seamless. Shelby Harris pushed back on that idea almost immediately. He reminded people of something simple but important: the Browns rotated through 3 quarterbacks. When that happens, a head coach can't publicly show favoritism. He can't overcommit. He can't crown one guy too early if the long-term picture isn't settled. That's coaching survival. If you publicly elevate one quarterback and circumstances force you to pivot, you risk losing credibility with the rest of the room. Stefanski had to stay measured, neutral, even if behind closed doors there were deeper conversations happening. And according to Harris, those conversations were happening. He described walking into the building and seeing young quarterbacks in Stefanski's office going through offense installs, reviewing concepts, breaking down adjustments. That's not neglect, that's development. Still, perception matters. Some fans felt the body language on the sidelines was stiff at times. Some analysts speculated that Stefanski's offensive structure might not fully unlock Shedeur's improvisational traits. None of that was confirmed, but in the NFL, speculation spreads quickly. It's important to frame this carefully. There is no verified report of conflict, no confirmed tension, just interpretation layered on top of limited public glimpses. But when a young quarterback carries star-level attention, every sideline interaction gets magnified. Now zoom out. Stefanski is known for structure, timing-based concepts, discipline within scheme. That style works well with quarterbacks who thrive in rhythm. The question some analysts quietly debated was whether Shedeur's strengths, play extension, off-script reads, confidence under pressure would mesh perfectly inside that framework. That's not criticism, it's stylistic evaluation. And this is where coaching becomes delicate. A head coach doesn't just design plays. He manages egos, contracts, depth charts, and external noise. When you have a high-paid veteran quarterback and a rising rookie drawing locker room praise, neutrality isn't optional, it's required. So if Stefanski appeared reserved publicly, it may not have been about belief, it may have been about control. Control of narrative. Control of competition. Control of the building. Because once a coach visibly picks a side too early, the rest of the roster reads it instantly. Shelby Harris essentially argued that the outside narrative overstated the disconnect. That inside the building, the work was being done, the development was real. But here, the underlying tension. If Shedeur ultimately wins the job, Stefanski will be credited for nurturing it. If he doesn't, critics may revisit those early perceptions of misalignment. That's the pressure point. A head coach in today's NFL doesn't just manage football, he manages optics. And right now, Kevin Stefanski is walking a tightrope, balancing development, competition, financial realities, and a locker room that's clearly paying attention. Because in Cleveland, this isn't just about who starts. It's about who leads and who empowers that leadership. At some point, every quarterback debate stops being emotional and starts being executive. Because no matter how loud the locker room praise gets, no matter how strong the offseason momentum feels, the final call doesn't belong to the players. It belongs to the front office. And in Cleveland, that power runs through Andrew Berry. Berry isn't just managing talent, he's managing timelines, contracts, salary cap strategy, long-term vision, and ownership expectations. A quarterback decision isn't just about who looks sharper in OTAs, it's about organizational direction. That's where things get complex. If a rookie like Shedeur Sanders earns genuine locker room belief early, that's a powerful internal signal. Veterans don't lightly endorse young quarterbacks. When they do, it usually means they see preparation, composure, and command. But belief doesn't override business. Berry has to evaluate asset value, draft capital invested, contract structures, dead cap implications, long-term flexibility. If a high-paid veteran is already on the roster, the math isn't emotional, it's strategic. Starting a rookie too early can accelerate development or expose him before the roster is fully stabilized. Sitting a rookie can preserve confidence or delay momentum that's organically building inside the building. That's the balancing act. And here, where front office philosophy matters most. Does Cleveland prioritize immediate stability? Or do they lean into upside and long-term ceiling? If Barry believes the roster is playoff ready right now, he may favor experience early in the season. If he believes the franchise trajectory depends on identifying the true future quarterback as soon as possible, that changes the calculus entirely. What makes this situation fascinating is timing. Quarterback competitions are rarely isolated football decisions. They ripple outward: ticket sales, national broadcasts, media narratives, fan patience, ownership perception. Every move sends a signal about the franchise's direction. And ownership always matters. Though not publicly dictating football calls, figures like Jimmy Haslam ultimately care about results and optics. A rookie quarterback generating buzz can energize a fanbase, but if that buzz turns into early losses, the same excitement becomes scrutiny. Barry has to account for that volatility. There's also trade leverage to consider. If a rookie clearly outperforms expectations, the value of a veteran quarterback shifts. That can open doors or close them depending on market timing. Front offices think in layers most fans never see. Layer 1, who gives us the best chance to win week 1? Layer 2, who gives us the best chance to win in December? Layer 3, who gives us the best chance to win for the next 5 years? Those answers are not always the same person. And that's where patience versus momentum becomes the central tension. If the locker room is quietly tilting toward the rookie, that's a data point. If coaching evaluations confirm consistent growth, that's another. But Barry also has analytics departments tracking performance trends, practice efficiency metrics, turnover probabilities, and decision-making under pressure. Modern quarterback decisions are hybrid, part eye test, part spreadsheet. But there's something numbers can't fully measure: belief. When veterans publicly support a young quarterback, it reduces risk internally. It signals buy-in, and buy-in can stabilize growing pains when adversity hits. Still, the front office cannot operate on sentiment. Andrew Barry's job is to remove emotion from a position that naturally generates it. And eventually, a decision will come, whether publicly dramatic or quietly procedural. It may arrive before week 1, it may unfold over several games, it may not even feel definitive until midseason. But when that decision happens, it won't just reflect preseason narratives. It will reflect financial modeling, developmental projections, locker room psychology, coaching input, ownership expectations, and long-term franchise identity. Because in the NFL, quarterback battles are rarely decided by hype alone. They're decided in conference rooms. And when Andrew Barry makes that call, it won't simply answer who starts. It will signal who Cleveland believes it is and who it intends to become. Zoom out. Strip away the training camp reps, the preseason debates, the sideline body language breakdowns. What's happening right now in Cleveland isn't just about who starts week 1. It's about 2026-2027 and the identity of the franchise moving forward. Because quarterback decisions echo for years. If Shedeur Sanders becomes the guy, this isn't just a roster shift, it's a timeline reset. Rookie contract quarterbacks create flexibility. Flexibility creates aggression. Aggression creates windows. When a team has a capable quarterback on a rookie deal, it can spend elsewhere. Defensive reinforcements, offensive line depth, skill position upgrades. The ripple effect stretches across the entire roster construction strategy. That's the blueprint many modern contenders have followed. But it only works if the quarterback is truly the future. And that's the risk. Projecting development is the hardest evaluation in football. You're not just asking, can he play? You're asking, can he lead a playoff run in January? Can he handle national spotlight games? Can he absorb adversity without fracturing confidence? Those answers don't show up in one preseason highlight. They show up over seasons. Now consider the alternative. If Cleveland leans toward veteran stability, the window becomes more immediate but potentially narrower. The front office would be signaling that they believe the roster is built to compete right now, not 2 years from now. That's a very different philosophical bet. And this is where Andrew Barry and Kevin Stefanski must align perfectly. Misalignment between front office and coaching staff at quarterback can fracture long-term plans. If the GM sees long-term upside but the coach prioritizes short-term security, tension builds. If the coach believes in development but ownership pressures immediate results, that pressure trickles downward. Quarterback clarity prevents that. Uncertainty amplifies it. Now factor in the broader narrative layer. Shedeur Sanders doesn't enter the league quietly. Being the son of Deion Sanders guarantees media oxygen. That attention can accelerate brand growth, fan engagement, and national relevance. But it also intensifies scrutiny. Every loss becomes louder, every mistake gets replayed, every sideline expression gets dissected. For a franchise, that's both opportunity and volatility. If it works, Cleveland becomes one of the most talked about young quarterback stories in the league. If it stumbles, critics frame it as overhype meeting reality. That's why 2026 matters more than 2025. Year 1 is evaluation, Year 2 is validation. By 2026, the organization will either feel confident it has found its long-term signal caller, or it will be revisiting the position again. And nothing stalls momentum like repeated quarterback resets. There's also locker room psychology to consider. If veterans publicly back a young quarterback early and he grows into the role, that builds a culture of internal trust. Players feel heard, their evaluations feel validated. That cohesion can carry into future seasons. But if early belief doesn't translate to sustained performance, it creates quiet doubt not just about the player but about the evaluation process itself. And then there's the playoff factor. Ultimately, quarterback debates fade when postseason success arrives. If Cleveland wins in January, the narrative settles. If it doesn't, the debate reopens no matter who's under center. That's the truth of the NFL. So when you ask what this means for 2026 and beyond, the answer isn't just about talent. It's about trajectory. Does Cleveland become a team building around ascending youth? Or a team maximizing a short competitive window? Does it stabilize the most important position in sports? Or continue searching? Quarterback clarity defines identity. And right now, Cleveland isn't just choosing a starter. It's choosing its future timeline. The decision may look like a depth chart move, but by 2026, we'll know whether it was something much bigger. Sometimes in the NFL, the biggest changes don't arrive with a press conference. They don't come with a bold headline. They don't come with a dramatic sideline confrontation or a leaked front office argument. They happen quietly. And that's what makes this situation in Cleveland so fascinating. There hasn't been a public quarterback controversy. No official depth chart shocker, no coach declaring a franchise-altering move. But there has been something else. A tone shift. When respected veterans begin publicly praising a young quarterback's preparation, when they emphasize work ethic over hype, when they go out of their way to dismiss rumors of tension, that's not random commentary. That's influence. And influence is how power shifts inside NFL buildings. Shedeur Sanders didn't walk into the facility with a starter label. He walked in with questions attached to his name, questions about legacy, questions about media attention, questions about whether the spotlight would outweigh the substance. Being the son of Deion Sanders guaranteed scrutiny from day one. But inside the building, according to teammates, the story sounds different. Less flash, more film study, less entitlement, more early arrivals and late departures. That distinction matters. Because in professional locker rooms, credibility isn't granted by last name, it's earned by repetition. Every practice rep, every extra meeting, every moment when no cameras are present. Over time, those habits accumulate, and when they do, something subtle begins to happen. Veterans start defending you without being asked to. That's the quiet power shift. Not a takeover, not a declaration, just a gradual recalibration of belief. Now, none of this guarantees anything. The NFL is ruthless about results. Locker room support helps but performance sustains. If interceptions pile up or the offense stalls, belief gets tested quickly. That's the reality of the position. But what makes this moment significant is timing. Usually, rookie quarterbacks spend their first offseason trying to avoid mistakes, trying not to stand out negatively, trying to survive. When teammates instead highlight leadership traits this early, it signals something stronger than raw talent. It signals presence. And presence is what separates quarterbacks who simply play the position from those who command it. Meanwhile, the coaching staff led by Kevin Stefanski must manage the optics carefully. Public neutrality doesn't mean private doubt. It often means protecting competition integrity and maintaining locker room balance. The front office with Andrew Berry at the center will ultimately make decisions based on performance, projection, and long-term strategy, not momentum alone. But internal momentum is never irrelevant. When belief grows organically, it reduces friction, it smooths transitions, it allows tough decisions to feel natural rather than forced. That's why this doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like evolution. No one has declared a regime change, no one has made a dramatic announcement. Yet if you listen closely to the language veterans use, to the consistency of their praise, to the way they frame his work ethic, you can sense something developing beneath the surface. A recalibration of authority. A quiet reshaping of expectation. If Shedeur ultimately becomes the starter, it won't feel sudden, it will feel earned, gradual, logical. And if he doesn't, if circumstances push the organization in a different direction, this moment will still stand as proof that he entered the league differently than many expected. Because before depth charts shifted, before contracts were reconsidered, before any official announcement was made, the locker room had already started talking. And in the NFL, that's often where the real power begins to move.